You knew the risks when you decided to drive drunk. There could be a crash. People could get hurt or killed. But that didn't stop you, did it? You knew you could get arrested. You could incur huge legal expenses, and you could possibly even lose your job. You were well aware of the consequences of driving drunk. But one thing's for sure. You were wrong when you said it was no big deal. Drive sober or get pulled over. This message brought to you by NHTSA.
This is the place where NFL legends live on and share their stories. This is the place for our Spotlight on the Positive segment, sharing what's good in the world of sports. This is also the place for the NFL Alumni Association and the Gridiron Greats. This place I speak of, Thursday Night Tailgate. Let's say hello to your hosts, Chris Mascaro and Bob Lazzari. Guys, take it away.
Thank you, Joe. Good evening, everybody. Merry Christmas, happy holidays to you and yours from all of us here on Thursday Night Tailgate. We hope you're really enjoying this wonderful holiday time of year. Chris Mascaro and Bob Lazzari, we're here with you. And if you've been good this year, well, you got to be excited because Santa's coming in 4 days, so something good should be under the tree for you. But if you've been naughty, well, you know what? Time's running out. You've got to be sort of in desperation mode right about now. But here's a way to get yourself off the naughty list. Smile a lot over the next 3 days. Tell the important people in your life how much you care about them. Tell a coworker what a great job they've done this year. You know, give out hugs, kind words. Do a random act of kindness for somebody. All of that stuff is free, folks, but it's going to mean the world to the person that you give them to. And I got a good feeling it'll get you off the naughty list. Tonight, Bob and I, well, we're going to put a bow on 2017 with a great group of guests that we're really, looking forward to sharing with you. And first up tonight is going to be a long overdue return visit from former Steelers tight end and four-time Super Bowl champion Randy Grossman. And when I say long overdue, the last time Randy joined us was way back on November 1st in 2012, so we're 5 years ago. So stock down me for not getting Randy back on the show sooner, but we look forward to getting Randy here and getting his thoughts on the catch that wasn't, right? This past weekend in the Steelers-Patriots game from current Steelers tight end Jesse James. Plus, we'll hear more stories from the golden era of Steelers football back in the 1970s. So looking forward to having Randy with us about 15 minutes from now. At the bottom of the hour, like we do every week, we'll be joined by former Patriots Pro Bowl running back Tony Collins to go through our five-star picks of the week. About 45 minutes from now, we'll get a return visit from former University of Georgia and Denver Broncos running back Olandis Gary. We'll talk to Olandis about his alma mater, right? Georgia. They're in the semifinals of the playoffs. They go up against Oklahoma. So we'll hear his thoughts on that. Plus, get his thoughts on the Broncos and what that organization needs to do to get back in the playoff mix next season. Like I say, Olandis will be here a little bit later on in this hour. We'll kick off hour number 2 with Pittsburgh Sports Talk radio host and the host of the Pirates and Penguins pre- and post-game shows, plus TNT Hall of Famer, don't forget, Paul Alexander. We'll talk to Paul and get his thoughts on the catch that wasn't. And I believe the last time Paul was with us on the show, he said that I think the daughter of a good friend of his is dating Jesse James. So plus he and Jesse are both Penn State alums, so a lot of good connections there between Paul and Jesse. We'll get his thoughts also on the Steelers. Right, we got two games left in the season to at least secure a first-round bye. So let's see what Paul's thoughts are if the Steelers can put this loss in the rear view and move forward and get these last 2 wins. He'll be along about an hour from now. Then we'll round out tonight's show with a visit from Detroit Tigers legendary pitcher, and the last pitcher, by the way, to win 30 games in a season, Denny McLain. Denny won those 31 games back in 1968, and he did it in 41 starts, completing 28 of those games, something I'm sure is never going to be done again. I venture to say that none of the starting pitchers in today's game are going to complete 28 games over the course of their career, let alone in one season. We'll get Denny's memories from that year, plus a whole lot more when he joins us about 90 minutes from now. So, folks, as you can tell, right, we're jam-packed tonight here on Thursday Night Tailgate. So thrilled to share the next 2 hours with you. So, you know what? Sit back, relax. Let us take your mind off everything else going on in your life for the next couple of hours. But we'll do what we do every week, and that's the best way we could ever possibly start the show, and that's by bringing in my co-host, Mr. Bob Lazari. Bob, Merry Christmas, my friend.
Yeah, to you, your lovely wife, your family, and everyone else. And back to your opening for a minute, Chris. I've been asking for Christy Brinkley under my tree since, I think, 1985, and it hasn't happened yet. So does that make me a naughty person or what? What's going on with this?
Bob, I can't imagine why Santa hasn't brought that to you. I know how much it means to you, and I'm sure Santa knows how much it means to you. It's a mystery. I can't believe he hasn't done it for you yet, my friend.
I got a couple more days to hope, Chris. But, again, we want to wish everyone out there, again, a great holiday season. It's been another great year here, Chris, and this is the time of the year we like to recognize some special people like yourself, your family, and all those people out there that make the show worth doing, and let's do it.
Yeah, absolutely, and you're right, Bob. Certainly, like I say, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to everyone out there listening. To Bob's point, the show wouldn't be nearly as fun if it wasn't for you guys. So we can't thank you enough, and we hope that it's a wonderful and safe holiday season for everybody out there. And Bob, like you mentioned last week here on the show, you and Tony D'Angelo, you recently put to bed your show Monday Night Sports Talk, but boy, I've sure been seeing a lot of great interviews getting posted out there on your YouTube channel. Let our listeners know all the great things you've added over the last week.
Well, yeah, after a 10-year run, Chris, we did, again, 230 shows over a 10-year period, over 400 guests, so we just didn't have much time to get it out to the masses like we wanted to, and I believe there's just over 100 interviews on the channel right now. I have to get at least another 30 up there. 4 were added this week, Chris. We had former MLB/NBA player Gene Conley is up there, Olympic champion Bob Segrin, NHL Hall of Famer Brian Leach, and, of course, our good friend, former Red Sox player Rico Petrocelli. Those were all added this week, but I have tons more, Chris. I have to send them about 5 or 6 every week until we get this done. But, again, Monday Night Sports 14 on YouTube. It's kind of like the best of archived ones from now on, and we'll be sure to make them good out there.
There you go. Yeah, it's great stuff. I've been a huge fan of that show, Bob, since you and I first met. I guess going on almost 7 years ago at this point. You guys were well into the show at that point, but a lot of great guests. And are you keeping the website up as well, or just on YouTube?
Just the YouTube channel, and they will continue as long as I keep sending them best of tapes. They will continue to show it here throughout Eastern Connecticut every Monday night. So I just dropped them off a couple months worth of videos to show. So it's been put to bed slightly, Chris, but it'll live on for a long time.
There you go. And folks, as you know, here on Thursday Night Tailgate, we are brought to you by the great folks over at the Louisville Slugger Museum and Factory, the Salt Creek Golf Retreat up in beautiful Nashville, Indiana, our friends over at Tops, and as well as our partners at the NFL Alumni Association and Mike Ditka's organization, the Gridiron Greats, who we love. Please go online and check them out at gridirongreats.org. And our newest sponsors, and a pair of good friends, Dan Pastorini and his company, DP Quality Foods. Dan has a wonderful lineup of award-winning spices that you're going to love. Go online to see them at dpqualityfoods.com. And our other good friend, Drew Bledsoe and Doubleback Wines. So go online to doubleback.com to see the great lineup of wines that Drew is growing up in his vineyards up there in the state of Washington. Great stuff, we promise.
It's time for another edition of Bob's Take. So, Bob, tell us, what's on your mind tonight?
All right, let's get into this week's Bob's Take segment. And, Bob, I want to start off this week by getting your thoughts on, the catch that wasn't with the Steelers and the Patriots. We've seen this dumb rule and its inconsistent interpretation impact a lot of games. And what's so frustrating for me, Bob, is the fact that early this season, the Patriots benefited from a similar play in their favor in a game against the Texans. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, go Google the Patriots-Texans game and see the last-second touchdown that Brady threw to Brandon Cooks. In that game, he throws a late touchdown pass where Cooks toe taps 2 feet inbounds in the end zone and starts to fall down, right? I mean, he's catching it out of bounds. He's got the 2 toes inbounds. He starts to fall forward. And guess what? Ball comes loose, and he traps it against the ground. And it's ruled a touchdown because, as they explained, 2 feet in the end zone with control of the ball. And even though he loses control of the ball on the way down, and they acknowledge it on the replay, they say, you know what, movement of the ball doesn't constitute an incompletion. So, Bob, I'm sort of, as you can imagine, beside myself. What's your take on what we saw at the end of the game between the Steelers and Patriots?
I don't know about you, Chris. In addition to your disappointment, I'm as confused as I've ever been about where this has got to go. Well, we know something needs to be done. The way the rule is written now, Chris, and this came out during the week that even Mike Tomlin said, he says the way the rule is written right now, he said it probably was a fumble, and but that doesn't make it a good rule. He's on the competition committee, Chris, and it's guys like him that have to get this looked at totally. I mean, this whole thing now, again, you know, for years, Chris, back in the day, and you remember this, back in the day when you had to catch a ball, it was basically controlling the ball and getting 2 feet down, right? And then they kind of complicated it, and I don't know if this has a lot to do with the emphasis on rules now. You have Dean Blandino and Mike Pereira on every telecast, and you have these games are getting longer and longer, Chris, because of this. There was a good article on SI.com today about why not bring a little bit of the subjectivity back on the parts of referees, because it's getting so crazy, Chris. Even though they look at these things so much, the rules are still so fuzzy, they really can't come up with a decent decision sometimes. And this one was kind of crazy. You know, was Jesse James a runner at the time, Chris? Surviving the ground. That's the whole the phrase we're hearing now, surviving the ground. What does that mean? You know, I mean, it used to be, and you remember for years, I just thought it was crossing the plane. But, well, obviously that doesn't mean anything now to wide receivers. So they have to come up with one pretty much kind of simple solution, Chris, that would apply to both runners and receivers when they're at the goal line, because this is totally ridiculous. And like you said, the Patriots are involved in a lot of these things. It was like the old Yankees, Chris, since the Jeffrey Mayer days. You know, it's the stronger get stronger, you know, and they benefit from these things. I don't think it could be quite the coincidence, but I mean, it just happens. I'm just glad that these two, one of them wasn't fighting for a playoff spot, and but then again, Chris, it's going to give New England their home field. So again, it's going to go crazy. But I think the bottom line, Chris, is what Mike Tomlin said. You know, we got to get people down and sit about this, and come back next year with something in place.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I could be a huge homer here, you know, because it impacted, you know, my team's ability to clinch, you know, a first-round bye and most likely home field advantage throughout the playoffs. So, you know, I'm all kinds of upset about all of that sort of thing. But I think back to your point, because this isn't new news, right? I mean, you go back to, you know, the Des Bryant catch that wasn't. We've seen Calvin Johnson have a catch that wasn't. You know, this isn't news. The part that really starts to, you know, really grate on you is the fact that, you know, this is the third game this season that the Patriots have benefited from this rule. The rule, you know, somehow went in their favor against the Texans. You know, the opposite of the rule goes then into their favor against, you know, the Steelers. And then there's another game, Bob, and I don't know if you've seen the highlights for this one. They beat the Jets, and this one really has me shaking my head because the Jets throw a swing pass to their tight end, and he makes the catch, and he's running towards the end zone, and he's you know, being tackled. Now he bobbles the ball, but he never loses it, never goes out of his arms, never hits the ground. He bobbles it in his arms, recaptures the ball. He gets tackled against the pylon, and not only do they rule it's not a catch, they rule it's Patriots ball going the other way. So, you know, they say it was a fumble, and then it was a fumble out of bounds because he hit the pylon. So now it's Patriots ball. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So anyway, something's got to happen here, Bob, and it needs to happen soon. And to your point, with Tomlin on the Rules Committee, you would think that that would be one of the main priorities after the season is we got to fix this.
I hope so, because it's embarrassing to a lot of people right now.
Right. All right, Bob, I also want to get your take. We talked last week about Aaron Rodgers coming back, and if they lost that game to the Panthers, which they did, what should they do, right? And what we found is the Packers ended up putting Rodgers on IR so they don't, risk further injury to him, which seems to make all kinds of sense. But, Bob, what's your take? Did they do the right thing here protecting him, or does it send a bad message to the rest of the team?
Well, what it does send you make a good point, Chris. You make a good assumption in the fact that the message that it sends to the team is that we cannot win without him, basically. He is, and they're probably right, but, when you think about a guy like Hundley, and he stepped in admirably, Chris, and, it's almost like, okay, we can't win. We have to settle for putting him back on IR and, bringing Hundley back and just do what you have to do. But you're right. I mean, what message does it send? It basically says, okay, let's just string out these last couple games. I definitely thought Rodgers would be a little sharper in his return. For him to throw 3 picks, there was some rust there. But I guess they couldn't win either way, Chris. You're not going to start the guy and risk. I mean, he has a tendency, he's getting that reputation of being banged up a lot at the end of seasons now, and a little brittle. I hate to say it because of his incredible talent. But toward the end of the year, he's always limping, and now it's an arm problem, so shoulder, whatever. So it's one of those deals where, they have to sit him, but I don't know if it sends that bad. I think every Packer fan out there can't argue with it, Chris. He is the franchise, and he is that good, and even a guy like him should get MVP votes this year because look what they did without. He is that good. But, again, they're a 500 team now, and they just have to finish out the string and find ways to strengthen this team to prevent this guy from getting hurt in the future.
Mm-hmm. Bob, one more, and, every year a couple of deserving players get snubbed for the Pro Bowl in the NFL or in the All-Star game in baseball. This season, some folks are making the case for Alex Smith, and you know what? They just might be right. When I look at, Alex is, his portfolio, if you will, for so far this season. Third best, quarterback in the AFC in passing yards behind Brady and Roethlisberger. Actually, fourth in passing yards. When he leads the conference in quarterback rating, he's third in touchdown passes, only thrown 5 picks so far this season. So, Bob, I'm curious to get what's your take. Does Alex Smith, does he deserve to be in the Pro Bowl?
I really feel sorry for the guy, Chris, because he's in the wrong conference. You have guys like Brady, Roethlisberger, and Rivers. I mean, these guys are very, very good, and they always put up the numbers. It's just sad that if you have asked anybody this week who has the NFL's #1 passer rating, they would not say Alex Smith, but he does. And, Chris, if you look at and this guy, we know how highly touted he was coming out of Utah, but you look at this guy and what he's done this year, he will pass his all-time completions for himself in a season. He will probably finish close to 70% of his passes completing. That hasn't happened since 2012 when he was in San Francisco, which was an incredible year. But 25 touchdowns, just 5 picks, and will throw for well over 4,000 yards. I mean, he probably will never have as good a year, and you and I have talked in the past. He had that kind of reputation as, just guiding teams, not a superstar. But he's put up superstar numbers, Chris, and he doesn't make the Pro Bowl. So you got to fear for the guy, and we'll see how he does in the postseason if they can get that far and all this. But, again, to answer your question, he's in the wrong conference.
All right, there you have it, folks. That is Bob's take for this week. We've got our first guest, Randy Grossman, hanging on the line. We're going to get to Randy on the other side of these words from our friends, Randy Minier up at the Salt Creek Golf Retreat in beautiful Nashville, Indiana, our good friend Dan Pastorini at DP Quality Foods, and Drew Bledsoe of Doubleback Wines.
If you're looking for a great place for your annual golf outing, a weekend golf getaway, or just a round of golf with your buddies, then Salt Creek Golf Retreat is just what you're looking for. Centrally located in Nashville, Indiana, just south of Indianapolis and west of Cincinnati. This challenging but fair 18-hole golf course appeals to all skill levels, and its scenic views of rolling hills and tree-lined fairways are sure to make golfing memories for years to come. Owned and operated by former Purdue and New York Giants fullback Randy Manier, Salt Creek Golf Retreat offers stay-and-play packages that include golf and a fully furnished 1- or 2-bedroom condo. After your rounds, be sure to stop by the 19th Hole Sports Bar and Restaurant for great food, fun, and drinks. Randy and his staff will treat you like family. For more information, log on to saltcreekgolf.com. That's saltcreekgolf.com. Or give them a call at 812-558-5944. Salt Creek Golf Retreat. Start making your golfing memories today. Most folks are familiar with Dan Pastorini's accomplishments on the football field or in race cars. But what most don't know? Dan's family background in the restaurant business. For 37 years, Dan's parents, Dante and Dorothy, owned and operated Pastorini's Longhorn Restaurant. So the Pastorini family has a long history of making great tasting food from family recipes. Dan and his partners want to bring some of that to you with their Texas-style rub, Texas-style hickory rub, and their garlic and herb seasoning. First introduced back in 2011, Dan's Texas-style rub immediately began winning awards, taking home the first-place trophy for Best Ribs at the Pasadena Livestock Show and Barbecue Cook-Off. They did it again at the 2012 Texas Ranger Wounded Warrior Cook-Off, and the awards just keep on coming. Check out Dan's line of spices online at dpqualityfoods.com. That's dpqualityfoods.com. And take what you put on the grill to a whole new level. Former NFL quarterback Drew Bledsoe, owning a winery has been a long-time aspiration that would allow him to combine his passion for fine wines and love of his hometown, the Walla Walla Valley. Drew returned in 2007 to plant his original estate vineyard, McQueen, on the southern end of the Walla Walla Valley. The following year, Drew launched Doubleback, an estate-focused winery with the goal to produce world-class Cabernet Sauvignon. Since the very first release, the 2007 Cabernet Sauvignon, Doubleback has received numerous accolades, including a spot on the Wine Spectre's Top 100 list. Drew's vision, brought to life by winemaker Josh McDaniels, remains to be a premium wine experience, completely focused on quality. To further assist the vision of high quality, estate-focused wine, Drew has acquired and planted 4 estate vineyards in the Walla Walla Valley, and recently broke ground on the future home of Doubleback Winery, which will open in 2018. Drew is committed to using only the most sustainable, superlative winemaking practices to ensure that Doubleback will be one of the best bottles of wine you will drink. We invite you to learn more about Doubleback and sign up for our mailing list at doubleback.com. That's doubleback.com.
Hear your favorite NFL legends sharing their stories and insights every week right here on Thursday Night Tailgate with Chris Mascaro and Bob Lazari. Take it away, guys.
There's no way out.
So as we bring Randy into the show, let me remind everybody about Randy's background. Played his college ball at Temple, where he was a 3-year starter and a third-team All-American back in 1973. Was an undrafted free agent signed by the Steelers in 1974 and was a member of all 4 Steelers Super Bowl championship teams of the 1970s. Played in the league from 74 to 81, all in Pittsburgh. Finished his career with 119 receptions for a little over 1,500 yards and 6 touchdowns, including a touchdown in Super Bowl X versus the Cowboys. And if you're a big Steelers fan like I am, you've seen Randy more recently doing a great job, oh, by the way, on the America's Game video and DVD that the NFL Network put together about the 1978 Steelers season. So, Randy, thank you so much for your time tonight. It's great having you as part of the show.
Great to have you
my
back.
pleasure.
So, Randy, I wanted to start by, talking about your time playing at Temple. And looking back over, the history of the Temple's football team, you guys had an unprecedented level of success during your time there. From 71 to 73, you guys go 27-1, and in your senior year, you guys go 9-1. And your offense scored 30 or more points in 8 of your 9 wins. So unbelievable output by, a great offense that you had there. Talk about what you remember about that 73 team.
Well, it was a real treat for me, and primarily because I got to play with the quarterback that I played in high school with that year. A fellow by the name of Steve Joachim. We went to high school together, graduated high school together. He went on to Penn State, and I went to Temple. And he was there for a couple of years, and it didn't work out. He ended up transferring to Temple. Had to sit out a year, which was my junior year, and would have been his junior year. But we got to play again together in 73. So he basically was a big part of the catalyst to that 73 team. He was quite a talent. Following year, he actually got drafted in a later round by the Colts when they were obviously when they're obviously back in Baltimore, but he didn't catch on. But he was great.
So, Randy, I'm curious, you guys go 9-1 that year, yet no bowl invitation. Were you guys shocked, disappointed? How did you guys not get invited to a bowl?
Well, keep in mind, that was like another century. Well, it was a different century. I mean, I think I lost count on how many bowl games there are now. But back in 73, you had the major bowls, and you didn't have the other 24 bowls that are out there. So, that's a primary reason. And we were not league affiliated. So we were independent, so, that as well. And
Randy, as I mentioned in your intro.
Do you guys
go
have
ahead.
A current count on how many? Do you guys have a count on the current number of bowls?
I think it's north of 40.
Last year. Yeah, it's startling.
Absolutely.
Right. And Randy, as I mentioned in your intro, you're an undrafted free agent. You end up signing with the Steelers. How did that come about? How did you end up in Pittsburgh?
Well, I was just talking about this the other day with somebody because I find it really humorous every year during the draft. The draft now is 7 rounds. In 1973, it's hard to imagine, but the draft was 17 rounds in 2 days. So the part I get the biggest laugh about is 32 teams, 7 rounds, 224 guys. Number 224 is Mr. Irrelevant. Well, there were only 26 teams in 74. 17 rounds, that's 442 guys. Now, I'm sure I would have been the next guy. I would have been 443, I'm sure. But if 224 is irrelevant, what's 443? But the night the draft was over, the Steelers had a representative in Philadelphia that contacted me, and we actually met the next day and signed the next day. But it also puts in perspective how different the business has evolved to and from. But the guy that they had in Philadelphia that signed me was the Steelers trainer, Ralph Berlin. They literally sent everybody out. Everybody. I think the equipment guy even went out, the sign guys. So I was actually signed the next day by the trainer, Ralph Berlin.
And to that point, Randy, and now I'm sure everyone, well, not everyone, but a lot of folks will remember the 74 class that the Steelers drafted, right? Like, Swan in the first round, Lambert in the second, Stallworth in the fourth, Webster in the fifth. So to your point, 17 rounds worth of guys, right? You're an undrafted free agent that signs the next day, as you point out. But now you've got to make an impression above all of those guys to try to make this team. What did you do that ended up catching Chuck Noll's eye?
Well, I caused the player strike. 1970.
Is that right?
1974 was the first player strike. No freedom, no football. I actually did not get freedom, being free agency, but the preseason back then was 6 games long, and the veterans actually stayed out for about half the preseason, and only a couple guys. I mean, very few of the veterans actually came in, but one of them that came in that was really significantly instrumental in me making a team was Joe Gilliam, the quarterback. And Joe loved to throw the ball. We had Lynn Swan, John Stallworth. They had drafted a tight end. They had 2 free agent tight ends, myself and Gary Tinkle, actually. Gary Tinkle, who went to school with Jack Lambert. Yeah, he was a free agent tight end also. And so, you know, what did I do? Basically, I stayed healthy. A couple guys, you know, got dinged up. At one point, I was running every offensive play, because they didn't have any other tight ends. So I stayed healthy. The veterans were out. Joe Gilliam loved to throw the ball, and I loved to catch the ball, and he spread it out. And that was kind of it.
Bob, questions for Randy?
It's great to speak with you again, Randy. And you're one of those guys that was lucky enough to have played for just one head coach through your entire career, and that just doesn't happen too often anymore,
right.
At least, Randy. And but that team under Chuck Noll, I mean, what we've asked this to so many different Steeler players, and we've gotten a few different answers, but for the most part, they're all on the same page that he was a very tough guy. Pretty fair guy, but really bare bones toughness is what his call to fame was. What did you see as one of his greatest strengths as a head coach?
Well, that's curious. I would never have initially described him as a tough guy. I mean, the number one thing was the second thing that you mentioned about fairness. He was a tremendously fair guy. But as far as toughness, if the ultimate fairness is toughness, then he was amazingly tough. But from a fair standpoint, it didn't really matter. I mean, to a very small degree, whether you were a first-round draft pick or you were a free agent, if you delivered, you were going to be the guy. And I mean, this is not, you know, a negative, but if you looked at a contrary organization like the Cowboys, I mean, their guys are like poster guys for each position. They look like a tight end. They looked like an offensive tackle. I mean, we had the strangest, motliest crew of guys that you could possibly imagine. But I think from Chuck's background, being a small, offensive guard that ran plays in, for the Browns, that he appreciated the fact that it didn't really matter what you look like. It only mattered what you could do. And so, from a fairness standpoint, he was as far as I'm concerned, the ultimate fair guy, and not tough, other than extremely demanding. That it was his way or the highway. But I don't consider that tough. I consider that tremendously fair. I mean, there was no hidden agenda with him.
And Randy, I believe I read earlier this week, I think Pro Football Reference had you as about 6'1", about 220 pounds, which for these days that would be an average size for a wide receiver. And
well, I don't even know if that's average anymore for a wide receiver.
Right? But I'm just wondering, as you watch the game today, did you ever imagine that these guys, tight ends, would be 50 pounds heavier, can run quicker, and how that position has truly evolved over 30 years or so?
Yeah, well, it really has, and it's obviously because of the stuff that they're putting in, McDonald's quarter pounders, obviously. And the guys are bigger, they're faster. Tight end, tight end and wide receiver are really drastically bigger. I mean, Antonio Brown's is an exception, but a lot of these wide receivers now, they're tight end size. I mean, they're getting big. The only position that really doesn't seem to have changed a whole lot are cornerbacks, but everybody else has gotten significantly bigger over a period of time. But that's a normal transition. We were bigger than the guys that preceded us, actually. It's just a normal course of events, I suppose. Kind of imagine when you continue to extrapolate out, what size guys are going to be.
And, speaking of Chuck, Randy, and I've watched the NFL series America's Game about the 78, Steelers several times. And again, you did a great job as part of that video. For those who haven't seen it and don't know much about Chuck outside of the 4 Super Bowl wins and the things you just said, to me he seemed like a guy who was a socially awkward genius. A guy, he wasn't a rah-rah guy, and you and Rocky tell great stories in that video about sort of how awkward Chuck was when he was trying to do a motivational speech. What was that like?
Well, there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat. You've got, motivational guys that are successful. You've got guys that are technicians that are successful. I guess the key is that you realize what your strengths are and you play towards that. He was not a motivational guy. His primary motivation was going back to my earlier comments about him being very upfront in regards to what was expected. And the motivation was you produce that or you're history. So, he really was a technician. He was a teacher. He was very, very focused on the process, not the outcome. The outcome, would come if you focused on the process. And I think that's why he had so much success. And the other part of it, which is kind of interesting to me, some people don't hold Chuck in as high regard as, he's held in high regard. I think he should be held in even higher regard. One of the reasons that people sometimes doubt his ability is because there was so much talent on the team. People don't realize, that's a blessing and it's a curse. You've got to control that power. You just don't jump in a Formula One car and win races in it. So his ability to manage the power that was on that team was one of his greatest strengths.
And Randy, Thomas Henderson discounted your value. He thought you were too small to be an effective tight end. I read the quote where, he said, you should have been a backup because, the only way you should have ever played is if someone dies or breaks a leg or something. And then you go out and you score a touchdown in Super Bowl 10 and you have a handful of big catches in Super Bowl 13. Did you ever say anything to Henderson after those games?
Well, it was a different time. He was an early on public trash-talking person as compared to, there was lots of conversation going on during a game between people, but, maybe it's the explosion of social media, I don't know, but public trash-talking is like the thing now, but he was early on a public trash-talker. But in reality, I basically went about my business. That was really kind of the Steeler way. So no, I didn't have anything to say to him other than what I delivered on the field.
Bob, one more for Randy?
Yeah, sure, Randy. Like a lot of tight ends, you just seemed like the ultimate team guy. And when they did throw you the ball, like in '78, you had almost 500 yards receiving. Was there any? And I know those were great teams, Randy, and of course, you probably wanted to get the ball more. You did a lot of blocking, but these guys want to catch passes and everything. Was there any frustration at all during your tenure there about you receiving the ball more?
Well, I think everybody was frustrated. I think Swan was frustrated, Stallworth was frustrated, I was frustrated. I don't think Franco and Rocky especially were. I mean, they got a reasonable number of passes out of the backfield. But although the game was beginning to evolve to a passing game, and the Steelers in '78, was much more evolved as a passing team than it was in '74 and '75, they didn't have as many plays. We were still very much a balanced, and the league was a balanced attack of run and pass. So there just wasn't enough plays to spread it out as much as you would like. But, that was it. You got what you got.
So, Randy, what are you doing now?
Well, since 1990, I have a wealth management practice here in western Pennsylvania in the tri-state area of West Virginia and Ohio and Pennsylvania. And I help people make money.
Good for you. You must be popular.
Yes, I am. Especially nowadays. The market's never going down again, right?
Well, Randy, thank you so much for taking time out of your night to be a part of the show. So many things we'd love to ask you and get your thoughts and insights on. We hope you'll come back on the show again real soon because you're fantastic. And like I say, so many things we'd love to get your feedback on.
Well, it was a pleasure. Thanks for asking me. And Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas. Happy New Year to you and yours, Randy. Hopefully we get the opportunity to catch up with you again real soon.
Bye.
Take care.
That is former Steelers tight end Randy Grossman. And, Bob, to Randy's point very early on, to think that, he was able to, shine, if you will, on a team, that had all of those great draft picks in '74, and then it lasted 17 rounds, and all of those players and that sort of thing is a true testament to what a great talent he was.
True, Chris. Just to make that team in '74, being undrafted, he fit in like a puzzle piece. You think about it; they needed a guy that would take on a role of just catching a few passes here and setting up blocks for those great running backs, and would never get the highlights, but, man, he was solid. You just look at his stats. Very, very consistent, Chris. 12.5 yards per catch every year, and, again, just love those tight ends from the old time.
Indeed, we do. All right, now back with us here on Thursday Night Tailgate is former Patriots Pro Bowl running back Tony Collins to help us go through our 5-star picks of this week. Hey, Tony, you should be feeling good, my friend, but I gotta be honest with you. My blood pressure hasn't come down since Sunday.
Go easy, Tony.
How you doing, Chris?
Yeah. Hey,
man,
Tony.
What a catch. That was a great catch, though, man. I got to give it to him.
Yeah, it was a great catch, and it was a touchdown, and the Steelers win that game. That's what happened. That's not what's in the record book, but that's what happened.
Man, I tell you, they need to change that rule, man. It's a crazy,
yeah, they do.
It's a crazy rule. It's a rule, but they need to change it. I really felt bad for the Steelers. I really did.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Tony. Guys, so let's review a little bit last week. And, again, none of us had a stellar week, but Bob, again, the only guy to finish over 500. Bob goes 3-2. Tony, you and I go 2-3, so we keep losing more ground to Bob. So it's not looking good for us. Again, Bob 3-2, you and I 2-3. For the season now, Bob is 44-21. I'm 39-26, and Tony, you keep inching closer to me. You're 37-28. So we got a long way to go, and there aren't a whole lot of weeks to get there. But we got another week. Maybe we get lucky.
Yeah, maybe.
Our first game this week is going to be the 6-8 Dolphins going to the 8-6 Chiefs. The Chiefs are a 10.5-point home favorite, which just seems like a lot to me for a Dolphins team that beat the Patriots, by the way, a couple of weeks ago. Over-under is 43.5. So, Tony, do you think the Dolphins have a shot here? Because it sure doesn't look like Vegas gives them any shot to win this game.
I'm going to go with Vegas, man. Dolphins don't have a chance to beat the Chiefs right now. Chiefs, I think the Chiefs right now, last couple of weeks, they've been playing pretty good, and they still got a lot left on the line. They're going to win their division, and I don't even know if the Dolphins can make the playoffs. They're going to play hard. They're going to be a spoiler, probably try to be a spoiler, but no way they beat Kansas City this week. So I'm going Kansas City, and I think this is going to be one of those blowout games. I think Kansas City is going to beat them up pretty bad. Let's go 37-14, Kansas City.
I had an early Tony Collins blowout special of the week. Bob, what do you think?
I totally agree with Tony. That was going to be my Tony Collins blowout special of the week. I had it 38-10. And, a team like Miami, guys, I can't take a team serious, again, that's given up, 90 to 100 points more than they've scored. They can't score with Kansas City. Going into that place, rabid environment, they don't play well on the road. And, Kansas City is in Kansas City, and they have a lot to play for. Yeah, so, again, 38-10, Kansas City.
Yeah, and I agree with you guys. The Chiefs have found a little something just in time to save their season. They got a huge win, last week over the Chargers, and the week before that over the Raiders. So two huge division wins in the last two games. Kareem Hunt is back on track, 155 yards rushing, and a touchdown on the ground, plus a receiving touchdown as well last week. Alex Smith, 231 yards, a couple of touchdowns against the Chargers. Tyreek Hill, boy, that guy's tough to defend, 88 yards and a touchdown last week. And the big difference for the Chiefs, was their defense. They intercepted Rivers 3 times. Now, on the opposite side, fellas, the Dolphins lost a tough one to the Bills last week after, blowing out Denver a couple of weeks ago and then beating the Patriots 2 weeks ago. So, the thing for the Dolphins is, Jay Cutler. Can he stay away from throwing picks? He threw 3 last week. That sort of ends the Dolphins' chances right there. And for the season, 18 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. And I think that's where the Dolphins lose. I don't have any faith that Cutler won't throw the game away again this week. So I'm with you guys. I got the Chiefs as well. Not quite as big a blowout, but I got them 30-17. Our second game is the 8-6 Bills going to Tony's what should be 10-4 Patriots. They're 11-3. Should be 10-4. Patriots are an 11.5-point home favorite. The over/under is 47. So Tony, can your boys avoid a letdown, with, a heavy conscience that they've got to be carrying around with them with that stolen win? Can they manage to beat the Bills?
I think so. I think we're getting a little healthy now. Offensive line, Gronk came back. I tell you what, without Gronk last week, there's no way we would have beat the Steelers. So I think the Patriots, what they always usually try to do is these last few games is getting ready for the playoffs, getting that momentum going. So, got to go with my Patriots, of course. It could be one of those games where the Patriots just wipe the Buffalo Bills out. Even though Buffalo has a chance to make the playoffs, it's a must-win for them. But there's no way they're going to come in and beat my Patriots in New England. So we're going to go 27-14 New England.
All right, Bob, what do you think?
Yeah, I like an even bigger score than that. I think New England, they were so battle tested last week. Came out of it barely, but again, they have that one more game in them that will definitely cement their place in the postseason, and that's going to be this week. So they're just as good as a road team as home, but they are in New England. Elements might be, from what I'm hearing, an issue here, but with Gronkowski, like Tony said, he'll always get MVP votes because you take him out of the lineup, they're a different team. But New England's going to win this game about 34-20.
All right. And guys, for me, the Bills they're a hard team to figure out. They started the season 5-2, and I thought for a minute, hey, maybe these guys can be a contender. Then they lose 3 in a row, and then you say, wow, they're the same old Bills. Well, now they've won 2 in a row, and they're the 6th seed in the AFC right now. They lost to the Patriots 3 weeks ago, but it was a tighter game than the score. I mean, it was 9-3 at half there, and they sacked Brady 3 times in that game. Brady throws a pick. They ran on the Bills and had some success in that game. 191 yards between Dion Lewis and Rex Burkhead, who also ran for 2 touchdowns. But last week against the Dolphins, the Bills held Kenyon Drake to 78 yards rushing, the same Kenyon Drake who ran for 114 yards against the Patriots. The Bills also, are the team that picked off Jay Cutler 3 times, the same Jay Cutler who threw 3 touchdown passes in the win against the Patriots. But, look, I don't think the Bills are going to win this game. But I don't think it's going to be a runaway like Vegas seems to think, and that 11.5-point spread. So I think the Patriots win, but I think the Bills are going to give them a tough time. I'll take the Pats 24-20. We've got our next guest, Olandis. Gary, hanging on the line. We'll get to Olandis here in just a minute. Our third game this week is the 9-5 Falcons going to the 10-4 Saints. The Saints are a 6-point home favorite, and the over/under is 52.5. So, Tony, the AFC South still has 3 teams in the race for the division title with the Saints, Panthers, and Falcons. The Saints and Panthers tied at the top. Falcons are a game back. The Falcons beat the Saints a couple of weeks ago, and they play the Panthers next week. So, if the Falcons were to lose, they'd be in a dogfight for that last playoff spot. So I think they're going to be a hungry team. What do you think? Who wins this game?
It's probably the best game of the week with those 2 teams playing. Man, it's going to be a tough one. I see them going back and forth with both teams got great quarterbacks. They got great receivers. But I just feel that the Saints I'm just going to give them that home field advantage. They pull it out. Last second field goal, 27-24. We're going to go with the Saints.
All right. Bob, who do you think wins here?
It's hard for me to go against the Saints at home late in the season with Breeze playing at a very high level. Both, it's beginning to be a good rivalry, guys, and their defenses are basically identical if you look at points against. So I just think the New Orleans got a little better offense at this point. They're home, and Breeze is continuing to do what he does. So I think Tony's right. They're going to cement their place in the playoffs and win pretty close game. I'm going to go 30-24 New Orleans.
All right. So, guys, you look over, the Saints have won 6 in a row at home this season, and they've won those games by an average margin of 11 points. So they're playing awfully well at home, as you would expect that they would. They're also the first team to have 2 running backs named to the Pro Bowl since Jim Otis and Terry Metcalf of the Cardinals back in 1975. Now, the Falcons' defense, they're 9th against the run, so, they do a pretty good job against the run. They're 12th against the pass, so not bad there either. The Saints' weakness is their run defense. They're 18th. The Falcons ran for 132 yards in the last game, and Devontae Freeman had 91 and a touchdown the last time that they played, and 126 yards and a touchdown Monday night against Tampa Bay, so he's heating up. So I think you're going to see a lot more of that. Plus, I think in their last matchup, Matt Ryan threw 3 interceptions, which was, the reason why it was a close game. Falcons won last time, won by 3. And you know what? I'm going to go the opposite way, fellas. I think the Falcons go on the road to New Orleans. I think that they march out a winner. I'm going with the Falcons in a pretty high-scoring game like you guys had. I think they win 27-24. Our fourth game is the 8-6 Seahawks going to the 8-6 Cowboys. The Cowboys are a 5-point favorite. The over/under is 47.5. Tony, Seattle got embarrassed last week at home against the Rams, blown out 42-7. Their worst loss of the Pete Carroll era. Then they got infighting now with a couple of their defensive players. The Cowboys get Ezekiel Elliott back. So how do you see this one unfolding?
Just really not the same defense in Seattle anymore. They've got so many injuries, and the Cowboys got Ezekiel coming back. They're fighting for their lives to get in the playoffs. They got to win out, and they need some help. With Ezekiel coming back, man, I just see the Cowboys winning this, and I see them winning it big too. I see them winning it 37-14 Cowboys.
Wow, another Tony Collins blowout special. 2 this week, Bob. Is Tony right?
I'm about to put Seattle in that same category with Arizona, Chris. You and I have them in the stock down category. After that debacle, that was a debacle last week against the Rams. I can't take them serious anymore, and it's amazing at this point of the time that Seattle, there's so many more better defenses in the league than them. It's hard to believe that's the case, but it is. And with Elliott coming back, having a lot to prove, Dallas still right there in the playoff hunt. I'm going to say Dallas gets by this team 31-17.
All right. So to both of your points, with Zeke back with the Cowboys, I agree. They're a different team. I think Seattle, the Seahawks are shell-shocked after last week's game. I think they're starting to point fingers, on top of, having to deal with, injuries along that defensive line. Todd Gurley rushed for 152 yards and 3 touchdowns in that game. Who would have guessed a Seattle defense would give up that? And so, even though Zeke is, they say he's in great shape coming back and, stayed in tip-top shape while he was away, but he's not in football shape. He probably going to need to get hit again a few times to get himself going. But I like the Cowboys too, guys. I think they run all over Seattle as well. I think it's going to be a little closer than the two of you have it, but I got the Cowboys winning this game 27-20. And our last game of the week is what should be my 12-2 Steelers. They're 11-3, but should be 12-2. Going to the 4-10 Texans on Christmas Day in a rare Monday afternoon game. Steelers are a 9-point road favorite. The over/under is 45. Tony, the question here is, can my boys, kind of put the whole non-catch situation in the Patriots game behind them and get focused to win this game?
They got a veteran team, man. So I look at the Steelers right now. I'm pretty sure that they're going to get over this loss. They have to get over this loss. Only problem without Antonio Brown, it's going to be not tough for them. Losing Antonio Brown, you just can't replace that guy. But with their running attack that they have, and the Texans, I don't even think they got a chance to beat the Steelers right now. I got another blowout, man. I'm going 42-7 Steelers.
Wow. Holy cow. Tony, all kinds of blowouts. Every game's a blowout this week for Tony. My goodness, Bob. What do you think?
I'm with Tony again. Houston, it's amazing. I know J.J. Watt, and this is why he's an MVP, out for the season. And they've turned in from possibly the best defense going into the season to the worst. And that's incredible when one guy can do something like that. I know it's a combination of things, but they've given up almost 400 points, which is outrageous. So Steelers just showing up are going to put up 30. And a team like Houston, they're going nowhere. Steelers are a little perturbed. By default, Steelers are going to go in there. How about 38-20?
Well, from both of your lips to God's ears. Yeah, I think the Steelers are going to be focused. I think they're going to be, determined to come out and win these final two games and get themselves, Tony, to your earlier point about the Patriots, try to get some momentum back heading into the postseason. I think the defense does pick it up. I think, with the other wide receivers having to step up, to your point, Tony, about Antonio Brown and his absence, but I think Ben, spreads up all around. I think we see a lot of Juju Smith-Schuster. I think we see more of Martavis Bryant, and I think Texans get a whole large dose of Le'Veon Bell. So I think the Steelers go in. I'm right around the same as you, Bob. I think they blow doors. I think they win this game 34-17. Tony, before we let you go, remind our listeners about the great things that you do to help kids get off to college.
TonyCollinsFoundation.org, helping kids go off to college. Go to that website, make donations. Every book that we sell goes into helping a kid go off to college.
Tony, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to you and your family,
Amen.
and make it a merry one and a very safe one. We look forward to catching up with you on the other side of New Year's. No show next week, so we look forward to catching up with you in 2018.
Merry Christmas, guys, and a Happy New Year to you.
Thank you, Tony.
Same to you, Tony. That is former Patriots Pro Bowl running back Tony Collins and our 5-star picks of the week. We've got our next guest, Olandis Gary, hanging on the line. We're going to get to Olandis on the other side of this quick station break.
You're listening to Thursday Night Tailgate, where NFL legends live on, with Chris Mascaro and Bob Lasseri. Available on TuneIn and Podbean. Now, back to Chris and Bob.
Just listen.
And now back in making his 5th appearance with us on Thursday Night Tailgate is Olandis Gary. Let me remind you about Olandis' background He's from Washington, D.C. He played his first 2 years of college ball at Marshall before transferring over to the University of Georgia to play his final 2 seasons. And in those 2 seasons at Georgia, he rushed for nearly 1,100 yards and 17 touchdowns. Those 17 touchdowns put him in the top 5 in the SEC both seasons. He was a 4th-round draft pick by the Denver Broncos in 1999, and he burst onto the scene in his rookie year when he replaced an injured Terrell Davis, and he went on to rush for nearly 1,200 yards and 7 touchdowns. He played in the NFL from 1999 to 2003 with the Broncos and the Lions, and over that time, he averaged 4 yards per carry and 7 yards per reception. In 99, he was the Week 15 Offensive Player of the Week, and we are very excited he is back with us again tonight here on Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, Olandis, Chris, and Bob here. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Welcome back. I appreciate it, fellas. Thanks for having me, and happy holidays to you guys.
Hey, happy holidays to you and yours, my friend. So, Olandis, I got to start by getting your thoughts on your alma mater, the University of Georgia, right? In the playoffs, how do you feel about their chances against Oklahoma and Heisman Trophy winner Baker Mayfield?
UGA all day, baby. You know, hey, we're going to do it, man. I definitely have faith in Kirby and what he's doing there. And I know you guys took a peek at the papers yesterday and seen that early signing period we had. I think we ended the day at the number 1 spot. So they're doing great things there.
And Olandis, when you look at Oklahoma's defense, they're 44th in the nation against the run. Is that the way Georgia's going to have to beat them, run the ball down their throats?
I mean, definitely. I mean, you know, we got two of the best running back duos in the country, and you know, running the ball definitely is going to play a part. But you know, I think the freshman is going to have to you know, throw the ball as well if we're going to get it done.
And Georgia's defense is 2nd in the nation against the pass. So are you confident in Georgia's defense to be able to stop Baker Mayfield, or are you concerned a little bit because they haven't faced anyone like him or Oklahoma's passing offense yet this season?
Well, I think my concern is more with the defensive front. You know, those guys being able to get to him, you know, before receivers can get open, and hopefully, you know, get some coverage sacks and things of that nature. But Baker Mayfield, I mean, he's not a Heisman Trophy winner for nothing. I mean, he's a great quarterback, and you know, we definitely know that he's going to do some great things. But we just hope to be able to contain him.
Bob, questions for Olandis?
Great to have you back, Olandis. Happy holidays. And I want to ask you back again about that 99 season, which was pretty magical for you. You got your opportunity because of the Terrell Davis injury, and that was a guy coming off a 2,000-yard season and had already put up basically all of his Hall of Fame stats, Olandis, up to that point. Was still a young man, incredibly. I was wondering, was there a lot of competitive fire between the two? How was he as a teammate? It had to be a little awkward, but you stepped in incredibly well.
Yeah, you know, just, you know, both of us coming from the University of Georgia, you know, when I got there, he brought me in. You know, I met him actually my senior year. He came down for our spring game, so I met him then. And, you know, he was a great guy. And, you know, just actually, you know, when I was a senior, you know, guys in the locker room talk, you know, we always talked about, you know, what teams we wanted to go to. And, you know, I actually said Denver, you know, just so I can learn under Terrell. So, you know, I got my wish there, and, you know, he was great. I mean, you know, we call him Dog, and, you know, he's definitely been a big brother to me, even, you know, throughout my years there and now as well.
Olandis, every time we bring a former Bronco on, I always love to get their attitudes and feelings about the altitude there. You coming from Georgia and playing up there, how long did it actually take you to feel comfortable as far as workouts, games, and I think you've told us in the past that was a major advantage for the Broncos going into each game against some of these teams?
Definitely, Bob. That's a great question. I know for me, I always tell people the same thing. It's a running joke for me, but I don't care if I'm in Denver in high altitude or New Orleans, you know, sea level. But, you know, for me, when I start running, I get tired automatically. So it's always the same. But, you know, it's definitely a huge advantage, you know, for, you know, in the kicking game and things like that. And, you know, so when people come there that's not used to playing there, or just haven't gotten acclimated yet to the altitude, is definitely a home field advantage for the Broncos.
And Olandis, getting back to Georgia, it would seem like if this is going to be the year the Bulldogs, win their first national championship since 1980, it only seems appropriate that they would need to exercise all their demons to do so and have to play Alabama for the title. Is that the way you want to win it? Do you want to see UGA play Alabama and beat them, and then you sort of put everything to bed and now you're national champions, or would you rather play Clemson?
If we're going to win the national championship, I don't care who we play. But I definitely, it would be great to do it that way. What you said earlier against the Crimson Tide. Kirby was the defense coordinator there for years, and studied there. So it would definitely be like you said, exercise some demons there, and then everything with Mark Richt and things like that of that nature. As far as people saying Mark Richt players, he recruited all those players and things like that. So, Kirby still had to get those guys together and believe. So, if we can win the national championship, I don't care who it's against. But I definitely, if we can get there, for me right now, I just wanted those guys to, we're in the playoffs. And now just to be able to get back every year, and with this recruiting class that we have coming in, ranked number one in the early signing period, I think Kirby took a big step in that direction yesterday.
Olandis, one more before we let you go. And I saw a post you put out on social media about how Sugar Ray Leonard sparked something in you at a young age that allowed you to pursue your dreams. What was it that he did that sparked that in you?
Oh wow, that's an awesome question. We're from the same area. I probably grew up maybe 15 minutes from him, and when he was in his prime, he had a cabaret for the kids in my area. My aunt took me and my cousins there to that, and I got to meet him. And that's probably, the first time I ever, got to meet a professional athlete. And, so for me growing up, in Prince George's County, just outside of Washington, D.C., he was always, the hometown hero. So, and I was able to meet him. And, he actually talked to me as well. So, I definitely cherished that moment. And, and it was Sugar Ray and also another guy here, Lynn Bias, he's from my area as well. And, he was the guy that got drafted by the Boston Celtics and, had a unfortunate accident that claimed his life. So, those two guys, I always pay homage to those guys anytime I can.
Olandis, before we let you go, how can our listeners stay up to date with all the great things that you're doing, whether it's online or it's over social media?
Everything probably more social. On Facebook, Instagram, Twitter is Olandis C. Gary. You can find me there, and so that's probably the best way.
Well, Olandis, we can't thank you enough for taking time out of your night to come back on the show. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to you and your family. We hope you'll come back and join us again real soon.
Definitely, guys. I appreciate it, and same to you both.
Always a pleasure.
All right. Take care, Olandis. We'll catch up soon, my friend.
Sure.
Good night.
That is former University of Georgia star running back and Denver Broncos running back Olandis Gary. And Bob, you want to talk about a university that has a certain moniker, with Paul Alexander set to join us here in a second. His alma mater, Penn State, has always been known as Linebacker U. When you go back and you look at the great stable of running backs the University of Georgia has had over the years with the Herschel Walkers and the Tim Worleys and the Terrell Davises and Olandis Gary, and boy, you could just continue to go on and on and on with the great running backs they had, and boy, he fit in there like a glove.
Oh, yeah, Garrison Hurst. I can keep going. Those were guys
right?
Just incredible to watch, and a lot of them had a lot of success at the next level, Chris. So, yeah, good pedigree, and Olandis talk about a guy that burst onto the NFL scene, almost 1,200 yards in relief there, and my goodness, it was a lot of fun to watch.
All right, coming up here in hour number 2 of Thursday Night Tailgate, we're going to be joined by Paul Alexander and Denny McLain. And before Paul joins us, I want to give a shout-out to our friends over at the Gridiron Greats organization. Folks, please help us support a wonderful cause that's taking care of so many of the guys that left, so much of themselves out on the field. Remember, these are the guys who played back when they still had to get off-season jobs to support themselves and their families. It's organizations like this one that was started up by Mike Ditka, again, the Gridiron Greats, who are there trying to help the guys that we all grew up watching and reading about. Please go online to gridirongreats.org to see how you can get involved. All right, now back and making his 15th appearance with us on Thursday Night Tailgate is AT&T Sportsnet host and TNT Hall of Famer Paul Alexander. One of the many blessings that Bob and I have had on this show is getting to know Paul over the last few years. He is not only one of the best, sports hosts on TV and radio anywhere in the country, but he's also the Pirates and Penguins pre- and post-game show host, and he does such a fantastic job also covering the Steelers, and he's been fantastic to us over the years, and we are honored that he is back with us again tonight here on Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, Paul, Chris, and Bob, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, my friend.
Hi, Paul. Yeah, Merry Christmas, guys. God bless you. You're very kind. Thank you.
So, Paul, let's go ahead. Let's rip the Band-Aid off right away. Catch or no catch?
It's no catch. It's the goofiest rule. The good news is Mike Tomlin and others are on the competition committee with the NFL. I'll go back 16 years ago. I was actually in New England at old New England Stadium for the Raiders game and the tuck rule. And I remember having a conversation with the late, great Dan Rooney, and I had just gotten back from New England covering that game because the winner of that game obviously would play Pittsburgh in the 2001 AFC Championship game. And I said, can you believe that happened? And he goes, it was the correct call of a horrible rule, and it will be changed. And that was so prophetic because it was. And that was the correct call on a horrible, horrible rule. Had that been a handoff and had, the situation been where it was a running back instead of a wide receiver, it's a touchdown. Had there been contact with Jesse James, it's a touchdown. It's a horrible rule. And the scary part to me is if you look at the New England game winner with Cooks against the Texans, he had both feet just inside the boundary in the end zone. He dives out of bounds, did not possess the football. They ruled it a touchdown. So that was a horrible interpretation of the rule. Although I don't imagine anyone at that point thought there was a real issue with it. To me, the whole replay system, it's really had been developed to make sure there was not an egregious error determining the outcome of a football game. When you have 4 entire minutes to stew over a call, to me, right then and there's nothing inconclusive about that. Right then and there, you have to go with the ruling on the field. If you couldn't reverse that within 4 minutes, it's inconclusive, and the ruling on the field stands. And that's what I think, makes people just so tired of the NFL, so tired of how it's adjudicated, so tired of how it's officiated. Because they called it a completion, for heaven's sakes, when they went through the entire explanation of why they ruled it an incomplete pass. So, long story, shortened to the best we can, and obviously it's been ad nauseum here in Pittsburgh where that's all that's been talked about. It was honestly, I believe, the correct interpretation of an absolutely ludicrous rule.
And Paul, if you're Keith Butler or Tomlin for that matter, in that game, at what point do you realize Sean Davis can't cover Gronk one-on-one and he needs help over the top, and then you're trying to make Brady beat you with Brandon Cooks or Danny Amendola because, you know what, you're taking Gronk out of the game?
Yeah, and to me, the only point that it really became ridiculous was on the two-point conversion when everybody in America, everybody outside of America that happened to be an NFL fan knew the ball was going to Gronk, except for, I guess, the Steelers. They were somehow unaware. That's unacceptable. That just the whole world knew the ball was going to him, except for, I guess, the Steelers, who left one poor man on an island to try and cover a 6'7" monolith with great speed and, like, vice grips for hands that hasn't dropped the ball since the mid-'80s. I don't even know if he was alive in the mid-'80s, but he didn't drop a ball in the mid-'80s. I can guarantee that. Yeah, that was pretty ridiculous. But when you look at the overall performance from the Steelers defense and the team, okay, maybe the concept was Gronk's going to get his, but we're still going to be able to win the game. And we're not going to have to change what we do dramatically. If you really allow the Jesse James catch to be a catch and a touchdown, we're probably not talking about how ridiculously wide open Gronk was on too many occasions. We're talking about how, all right, Gronk got his, but the Steelers still found a way. But if a rematch is inevitable, and I know the Steeler fans certainly hope so, the Steelers hope so, unless someone else does their dirty work. Keep in mind, the Steelers haven't won a Super Bowl going through New England. Someone else has taken care of the Patriots for them. So that they're the boogeyman in Pittsburgh. You know, they're the one that they're the, you know, the great undead that, you know, oh, we have the dead men walking and all these silly shows now with zombies. The Patriots are a real life zombie for the Steelers. And if you think about what's, you know, happened and transpired with New England, their last two Super Bowl victories have been gifts. Seattle unconscionably threw the football in that horrible decision by Pete Carroll, and, you know, that should haunt Seattle fans forever. Atlanta simply gave a Super Bowl away to New England. Now, granted, they're the recipient. They have the Lombardis. But now then you see three different times, three different occasions this year already, New England has been gifted a game-changing call at the end of a game by the same gentleman, by the way, in New York. So I'm not a conspiracy guy, but when does this luck run out? When do they have to actually earn it? And yes, of course, I'm gonna revisit Spygate. It happened. It's real. And the most damning evidence of all is the fact that the real evidence was destroyed. When do you destroy evidence? You destroy evidence when people can't handle the truth. And Roger Goodell was smart enough to know we can't take Super Bowls away. We can't, like the NCAA so bogusly does, where they take away championships and victories and bowl wins. No, it happened, and you can't go and reverse history, for heaven's sakes. Spygate happened. I was in the locker room in 2001 and 2004. In 2001, Joey Porter looked at me and just said, it's as if they knew what we were going to do before we did it. And in hindsight, guess what they did? So right. I hate to go all the way back there, but this New England thing to me is getting a little tiresome. I mean, I covered the game in New England for the Tuck rule. Okay. It was the correct interpretation of a horrible rule. But these guys are living in some sort of bizarre, like almost like a parallel universe where things just seem to work out for them. And that game was a prime example of they had no business winning that game.
Right.
None.
Right?
I mean, absolutely
Agreed.
none.
Yeah.
So that leads me to my next question.
So we ripped
Paul.
the Band-Aid off pretty hard there, didn't we, guys?
Indeed. So let's take that a step further now. Maybe it goes in the opposite direction, because here's where I'm confused a little bit. James Conner goes down with an injury, right? We lose him for the season. Then they go out and sign Stephen Ridley, former Patriot, and not D'Angelo Williams. Are we trying to milk a little bit of information? We looking ahead, saying, you know what, if it happens again, maybe we can get a little intel here.
You know, you have no idea. You know, when you're off for an entire, D'Angelo has not been on a roster this entire season, so he might just not be in football shape. The signing curious, certainly. But you know what's so funny about that? And normally it's like the week before you play an opponent, you'll grab somebody from a practice squad or somebody for the upcoming opponent. I don't think it's ever really worked out very well. I don't think anybody's gained enough information to make it an honest-to-goodness advantage. If the player's not good enough to make a difference in the game, his intel's probably not going to do much either.
Bob, questions for Paul?
Sure, Paul. Putting aside the catch or no catch controversy last week, were you surprised on the game-ending interception of Roethlisberger trying to throw it in the thread? It was eerily similar of Russell Wilson a couple of years ago, obviously in the Super Bowl. I was just astounded that he was trying it. But then again, you, probably knowing Roethlisberger, how he is, probably wanted to just end all doubt, get the New England Patriots off his back. What are you hearing about that call?
Well, what I observed was a horrible decision in terms of personnel. Horrible usage of 4 minutes. That review, catch or no catch, took 4 minutes. Todd Haley, the offensive coordinator, Ben Roethlisberger, the future potential Hall of Fame quarterback, they didn't have a conversation. They didn't have 2 plays called. They didn't have anything planned. They wasted that entirety of a 4-minute, basically extended timeout that the Steelers could have taken advantage of. Martavis Bryant, who was a huge difference in the game, was basically uncoverable, not completely like Gronk, but the Patriots were having trouble with him all day. He's not even on the field in the final plays of the game. He's not out there. He's not part of the personnel. So while the catch, no catch went horribly wrong for the Steelers, and it was a very controversial and I would say, difficult call to take, what the Steelers did with what they had left in terms of time was egregiously wrong. If Hayward Bay catches that ball and is somehow tackled, it's game over. You don't throw the ball at the middle of the field. You don't throw the ball into a crowd. If you don't see, if that is your intention on the slant and he's gained the end zone and you still throw it, that's a mistake into a crowd of people. But if you have that as your play and you think you're going to maybe beat the Patriots on that play, and then you see, as he should have seen, it's not open, you chuck the ball into the stands. You throw it 6 rows deep, and then you live to have another play. And then after that play, even if it doesn't work, you still kick a game-time field goal and take your chances in overtime. That was a horrible, horrible finish by the Steelers on the head coach, the O coordinator, and the quarterback. Neither, all of them, guilty by association.
And one of the beauties of having you on the show, Paul, is that we can cross over sports. And I guess what's in the baseball news now, I'm hearing that the Yankees are really interested and almost set to land a guy like Gerald Cole. And this is a guy that probably hasn't been the same pitcher since 2015, Paul, but still very good, over 200 innings last year. What is his status in Pittsburgh? What is his shall we say, legacy right now there? What's going to happen to this guy?
That's a great question. The problem is, as a first overall pick in the draft, you're going to have him through his arbitration, eligible years, and that's it. As a full-blown free agent, Gerald Cole's gone. I always thought he'd head back to the left coast where he's from. So maybe the Pirates want to make sure that before he goes, they get a little something for him. He has unbelievable stuff. He also gave up 32 home runs this year. That's alarming for a guy that throws 98 in the ninth inning, if he ever sees a ninth inning. He still tries to overpower people. He hasn't developed as a pitcher. He's still kind of a thrower in a lot of ways. But there's every pitching coach, I would think, in Major League Baseball that thinks, I can fix this kid because the arm is unbelievable. The arm is absolutely electric. It's overpowering. The stuff, it's not. It's not knee buckling, really, horribly bad swing and miss kind of stuff. To me, if you want to see a Major League pitcher with great stuff, watch a good hitter take a horrible swing. Then you know you have a pitcher that is big time. He never really gets that, and again, the 32 home runs were alarming. He's a guy that of a certain agent that the Pirates know he's not signing a second contract with them. He's going to go to the highest bidder. You're never able, with a certain agent, to, buy out any kind of arbitration years or buy out, an opportunity to get through the first couple of years of free agents. That's not going to happen. So the Yankees seem to be back to being the Yankees again, and if they want to go get, they got Giancarlo Stanton, obviously, so they're in the buying mode, and it's a buyer's market right now. So if someone knocks the Pirates' socks off with prospects and great young talent, they'll definitely deal, Garrett Cole, even though, he's right now, by far, their best starting pitcher.
Paul, just a couple more before we let you go. And first, I want to get your feeling. What's the likelihood? What are you hearing on the likelihood that Ryan Shazier just really ever plays again?
I think it's very unlikely. I was so excited by the initial prognosis, which was no surgery, and, it is a spinal contusion. I remember Tommy Maddox, when he was really hot with the Steelers, had a spinal contusion, lost feeling in his legs for a brief period of time. It was very temporary. He came back. He missed one start and made the next start. The fact that they then had to reevaluate that prognosis and do a spinal stabilization surgery right now, as opposed to thinking about his, future playing career, we're more worried about his future career as a human, his future, life as a functioning, walking, running. His playing career, I think, right now would be in serious jeopardy. And right now, for me, my thoughts and prayers are about, I just hope he's able to have a very normal life and get back to that.
And Paul, got to get your thoughts on the Penguins here real quick. Certainly, they're off to a slow start, a little over 500. Your thought, is it injuries, or are we starting to see all the extra postseason games that they had to play over the last couple of seasons starting to catch up to them?
Well, you're seeing really, and unlike baseball, salary caps are designed to prevent any type of dynasties. So they had to part ways with a couple of key players that were really huge in their, second consecutive cup run. So, without Matt Cullen, they've lost their third line center, and right now they're just trying to find a way. And yes, playing deep into June, the last 2 years, when most of the teams that they're playing, were done sometime at the beginning of May, it's a huge difference. And also, there's a hunger. When you haven't won a championship, as a coach and as a staff, I think I could get my team to be extremely hungry. That championship's out there. You dangle that as the carrot. You gotta make every sacrifice to win that championship. You got to do this in the off season to win that championship. Well, these guys have just won 2 straight. They've all had their day with the cup. They've all had their moment in the sun. They probably have more endorsements that they had the last couple of years. They probably have a couple more zeros in their contracts. So I think there's a hunger element, and I think more importantly, there's a fatigue element. They also believe that since they won the last 2 cups, there's that switch, that phantom switch somewhere that when they need to, they'll turn that on and they'll be good to go. We all know that switch doesn't exist. We also know that Metro Division in the NHL right now is killing it. They're 2 points out of last place. I'm happy to report them at the game right now. Patrick Hornquist has scored here in the third period to tie the game at 1 against Columbus. But Columbus is a very, formidable foe. The Rangers are playing well. The Devils are a big surprise in their division. Washington is always a great regular season team. So they got the work cut out for them. But I'll take my chances with the captain, Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Matt Murray, a great young goaltender that, as a rookie, somehow, I guess it's a loosely defined term, rookie in the NHL. Matt Murray won 2 Stanley Cups as a rookie. I don't know how you get 2 years as a rookie, but he did. Somehow he managed to pull that off. So I think they still have a lot of great pieces. I love Jim Rutherford, the general manager. He's already come out and publicly said, we got to shake this thing up. It's not working right now. So that puts everybody on alert. That's not an absolute given, to be able to remain here for as long as they choose. So all of the, somewhat, expendable players understand that if they're not playing, absolutely all out every night, they could be moved. So I think, there's the moratorium right now. They made a couple small moves before the Christmas trade moratorium. But I think as soon as that ends December the 28th, Jim Rutherford's going to make a power play and a big blockhouse trade. Going back to the 90s with Al Sanderson and Ronnie Francis and some of the trades the Penguins made to win those 2 cups. These guys are ready to do whatever it takes to win another one. So don't count them out. But at the same time, please, as a Penguin fan, don't be greedy either. You just won 2 straight cups. It's okay. Let's not reach for any panic buttons or get, let's not fire anybody or get too upset. These guys are a great group of guys that have just won 2 consecutive championships. We have cities, that have never tasted one. So it's all good, and I think they'll be fine. I do. I think when it all said and done, I'm certainly gonna put them into the postseason. As we know in the NHL, unlike a lot of the other sports, the 8th seed in the NHL, and they have every bit as much of an opportunity to win it all as that number 1 seed.
Right. So, Paul, before we let you go, remind our listeners how they can stay up to date with all the great things you're doing and follow you on social media.
They'll check us out at AT&T Sportsnet. We're the home of the Pirates and the Penguins. P. Alexander 44 on Twitter, and just Paul Alexander on Instagram and Facebook. I just love all things sports. I love the positivity that you guys bring. It's an honor and a privilege to be a part of with you guys. So you guys just keep doing what you're doing, and anytime you call, the answer is yes.
We appreciate you very much, Paul. Always a privilege for Bob and I to get to spend some time with you. Again, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to you and your family. We look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Merry Christmas, guys. God bless.
Good night.
Take care, Paul. That is the great Paul Alexander. Again, he does the pre and post game shows for the Pirates and the Penguins, and he's all over the Steelers, as you heard. So, boy, it does my heart good, Bob, to get to spend some time with Paul, and then go over the catch no catch. But I feel a little bit better. I tell you, my blood pressure's been high since Sunday, but I feel a little bit better talking to Paul.
Well, Paul always puts it out there, Chris. He's a Pittsburgh guy, but very, very fair, and he said what a lot of us have said. It was a catch under the rules, but should it be a rule? But anytime we need insight into Pittsburgh sports, and you being a Pittsburgh guy, Chris, he's probably one of our favorite guests for sure, and we love him. That's why he's in our Hall of Fame. He's just as good a human being as he is a journalist.
All right, we've got our next guest, Denny McLain, hanging on the line. We'll get to Denny after this quick station ID.
Hear NFL legends, players, coaches, and media members from around the country, sharing their insights and stories with us year-round. Here on Thursday Night Tailgate.
And now joining us on Thursday Night Tailgate is Detroit Tigers legendary pitcher Denny McLain. Let me remind you about Denny's background. He is from Markham, Illinois, which is just a little south of Chicago. He was signed out of high school in 1962 by the Chicago White Sox as an amateur free agent. In his minor league debut, he threw a no-hitter against the Salem Rebels, striking out 16. Back in the early 60s, players with 1 year of service who weren't brought up to the major leagues were subject to a new draft, essentially kind of like the Rule 5 draft now, and they would become draftees and free agents. So the Detroit Tigers selected Denny off waivers, if you will, in April of 1963, and he made his major league debut on September 21st, 1963, against the White Sox, which we'll talk about here in a minute. After spending a couple of seasons down in the minors, he was recalled in 1965 and set a major league record for relief pitchers when he struck out 7 consecutive batters after coming in the first inning of relief of Tiger starter Dave Wickersham. Fast forward to 1968 when he started a league-high 41 games and finished a remarkable 28 of them. He became the last pitcher to win more than 30 games, or win 30 or more games, I should say, in the season, and won the Cy Young Award and MVP Award in 1968 with a 31-6 record and a 1.96 ERA. He would go on to win the Cy Young Award again the following year in '69 when he led the league again in wins with 24. In all, he pitched in the major leagues from '63 to 1972, amassed a 131 and 91 record and an ERA of 3.39. He started 264 games and completed an unbelievable 105 of them, and we are honored that he is with us tonight here on Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, Denny, Chris, and Bob here. Thanks for coming on the show.
Hi, Denny.
Chris and Bob, thank you very much. Thanks for the invitation.
So, Denny, I want to start by going back to your time with the White Sox. Did you grow, being from just south of Chicago, did you grow up a White Sox or a Cubs fan, and was signing with the White Sox kind of a dream come true?
Well, let me make this as clear as I can. I hated the White Sox to begin with. I was always a Cub fan. You couldn't even mention the word White Sox in my home. My father would chop your head off if you mentioned the word White Sox. And when there were three clubs that came out to sign me. One was the Yankees, one was the Milwaukee Brewers, not Milwaukee Brewers, but Milwaukee Braves then, and then, of course, the White Sox. And the White Sox came equipped with a check for $17,000 and said, we got $17,000 for you. And as they walked out of the house, my mother said, we're signing with the White Sox. My dad had passed away. And my mother said, we're signing with the White Sox. I said, no, I want to play with the Yankees. They had the same amount of money. She said, didn't you see his shoes? The Yankee guy, the Yankee scout, had a hole in the bottom of his shoes, and his shoes weren't shined. I said, what the hell has that got to do with me playing with the Yankees? She says, if they can't have a new pair of shoes on their scout, you think the check is any good? I said, oh, Mom. So that's how the hell I got with the White Sox. And then 4 or 5 months later, 6 months later, Al Lopez, who then was called the Senor, the dean of managers in the world, just pitched 9 perfect innings down in Mexico City. And I thought I was on my way. I mean, I was only 19, and I just had the first spring training I'd ever been in, and I had a great spring training. And lo and behold, Lopez called me up to the front of the airplane and said, listen, I got some good and bad news for you. He says, I have to get rid of either you or one of the other pitchers. He got me over Bruce Howard. And I said, why? He said, God, this rule that you guys just talked about. We can only keep so many guys who are on the major league roster, and I'm not going to keep both of you. So what we're going to do is Saturday morning at 10 o'clock, you guys are going to pitch against each other, and the guy who loses is going on waivers. And I'm thinking, boy, this is a hell of a thing. And he says, let me be real honest with you, Denny. He says, I don't think you'll ever be a major league pitcher. You don't have a curveball. You don't have a slider. You don't have a changeup. All you've got is a great fastball. But he says the big leagues can hit that fastball. So here I am, 19 years old. I'm ready to jump out of the airplane at 40,000 feet at about that time. And so on Saturday morning at 10 o'clock, I'm the home team, and I throw the first pitch of the ball game to a guy named Dave Nicholson, who hit monster home runs. I mean, hit monster shots. First pitch I throw is right down the middle of the plate where it shouldn't be, and he hits it 14 miles. It wound up in Daytona, I think, from Lakeland. And so I get the long and short of the story is I get beat 1-0. 20 minutes after the game is over, Lopez comes to me and says, we're putting you on waivers. He says, if they haven't put you on already, he says, I think somebody's going to pick you up. He says, Detroit's called here a couple of times today wanting to know if you're a winner or losing. So he says, I expect them to be the club. So about 2 hours later, the chief scout for the Detroit Tigers drove up in a great big black Cadillac and said, Denny McLain, you're with us. Let's go to Tiger Town. And as they say, the rest is history.
So, to your point about the rest is history, you make your major league debut, right, against the White Sox. Like you said, right. You're 19 years old. You pitch a complete game. You allow 1 earned run. You struck out 8. You picked 2 guys off. You hit a home run.
I did.
Share that story.
Well, the home run is just everybody tells me I hit a home run because I obviously was in a deep fog as soon as I hit the ball because I don't remember the home run. I mean, I probably ran around the bases quicker than O.J. Simpson ran from goal line to goal line. I mean, I was that much awed to begin with, and so we win the ball game, as you said. And after the ball game, Charlie Dressen was our manager, who was one of the great iconic managers of all time. Managed the Dodgers, the Giants. I mean, he managed a whole bunch of ball clubs. And Charlie said to me, he says, come on, I want to take a walk with you. This is right after the game, 15 minutes. He grabbed me by the hand, and Charlie was only about 5'2", and here I am about 6 foot tall, and it looked like the pumpkin in the bumpkin walking down the middle of Tiger Stadium. And Charlie says, "Come on, I want you to meet somebody." And he walks me right down the visitors' dugout, and there's Al Lopez on the other side of the dugout doing a TV show or a radio show. And Al Lopez sticks out his hand and says, "Hi, Denny, good to see you again." And Charlie says, "If you shake his hand, I'll release you today." He says, "He's a jerk." And next thing I know, I said, Mr. Lopez, it's good to see you." He says, "Apparently not." I said, "Well, it's not as much fun as it could have been." I said, "But that's okay." I said, "By the way, Mr. Lopez," I said, "I've always been a Cub fan, so my feelings weren't even hurt." I said, "It's okay." So that's the way we started off. But that's and every time I pitched against the White Sox, it was something special, especially when I pitched in Chicago.
And Denny, was it planned for you to face the White Sox as the first team that you would get your first start against, or was it just coincidence? It just happened to work out like that?
Well, I think it was a little bit of both, but I knew about a week before that I was going to pitch against the White Sox. They had told me, he says, if the starting rotation stays the way it is and we don't get any rain, you'll start on Saturday. And hell, I didn't even know who we were playing yet that weekend. And then later on, I don't know if it was that night or the next day, Dressen came up to me and says, "Oh, by the way, do you know who we're playing Saturday?" I says, "I do now." I said, "The White Sox." I said, "Well, thanks a million, Charlie. I won't sleep now till Sunday." So, so they let me go out there. And the thing about the pickoffs, I picked 2 guys off that day. I don't know if I ever picked another guy off in my whole career. I don't remember picking anybody else off. But those were 2 badly needed pickoffs that day.
Bob, questions for Denny?
Denny, it's great to speak with you again. It's been a few years. We had you on the TV show side a few years back.
Oh,
We just ended that 10-year run of that TV show, Lenny. And Denny, and I got to tell you, that was one of the you were one of our favorite guests, and it remains one of the better interviews we had still posted on YouTube. So we thank you for that. But it's great to speak with you again. And I want to ask you about that 65 season, Denny, when you really, really came into your own. You got your feet wet in 64, starting 19, 20 games or so. But going into 65, spring training, you were still 20 years old, Denny. Did you have any idea that you would start 33 games, pitch over 200 innings, and become an integral part of that staff?
I didn't until that magical night, the night I went out there. I was pulled in from the bullpen. I mean, I was on the bubble. I mean, I literally was on the bubble. The night I finally got a chance, I relieved Dave Wickersham, as you alluded to, and struck out 7 in a row. And I'll tell you, between you, me, and God, and the angels in heaven, I actually struck out 8. The umpire later admitted that he missed the 8th guy. But that's okay. What the hell? It's been a long time now. But when I pitched that night, it just was one of those nights. The weather was perfect. The humidity, it was one of those moments. And but for some reason, everything kicked in that night. And for the first time in my major league career, as short as it was, I was throwing the ball the way I threw the ball when I was in high school. And when I was in the minor leagues for a short time, like up at Duluth, Minnesota, I played that year. So there were all kinds of, the year before, so there were all kinds of crazy things that were going on. And I felt myself getting stronger. And I think one of the reasons why I got stronger, and you don't see this anymore, is that pitchers aren't allowed to throw a lot anymore. And I used to throw every day. I used to throw every day 6, 7, 8 minutes. And if I had a day off, if I was going to be the 4th starter or the 5th or 6th starter in a week, then I would take one day and I would pitch for 35 or 40 minutes between starts. So I think I just got stronger from the repetition. Like working out with weights, I just got stronger and stronger. My worst problem was I didn't have a curve. I literally didn't really have a good curveball. It was barely a curveball. I had a little bit of a slider, a breaking ball, and I had a real good changeup. So I actually had a fastball and a changeup for the first year I played up there. And I think at 65, I think I won 16 games with just a fastball and a changeup. And before we traded Frank Larry, I think it was 64. And Frank Larry, who just died, by the way, a couple of days ago, was known as the Yankee Killer. He used to beat the Yankees every time he walked out there. And in spring training that year, Frank sat me down and said, "Listen, you got a great fastball." He says, "You're 19 years old. You throw strikes." He says, "I can't believe that you can throw 30 strikes in a row. Nobody does that." He says, "And third," he said, "I'm going to show you how to throw a curveball. I'm going to show you the easiest curveball there is in the world." Well, you know, if you're 19, 20 years old and you still haven't been able to throw a curveball, the easiest one in the world does not make a lot of sense to me. So I will tell you this. Within 15 minutes, he had me throwing a curveball. And, of course, I almost broke my elbow the way he had me throwing it. But he made some adjustments with my grip and what have you. And then in 65, I started throwing it more and more in the bullpen, not during a game. I still relied upon, you know, you'll hear the old story, you go home with the girl you took to the dance. And I just, every time I got in trouble, I went to my one pitch fastball. If I got behind 2-0, 3-1, I'd throw a changeup. So that was the basic structure that I had from Charlie Dressen and Mike Rourke, who was also one of our coaches there. So they gave me good structure. They gave me good things to think about. And then the greatest thing in the world that happened to me, number one, I'm playing with a good ball club. Never, ever lose sight of that. I mean, I got Freehand at home plate. I got Cash at first base. I got McCullough at second. I got Euler at short. I've got K-Line in right field, Willie Horton, Gates Brown, Jimmy Northup, and Mickey Stanley playing. So we had 7 all-stars in our lineup eventually. And the best thing that happened to me, Johnny Sane wound up being our pitching coach. And Johnny worked with me just day in and day out and said, "I just can't believe that you're not going to win 35 ball games one day." And, you know, everybody jokes with everybody. And so in 68, when that year started to unroll, Johnny said at the break, he said, "You going to win 30? I said, "No, I think I'm going to win more than that." Just joking. I mean, I wasn't serious about it at all. And Ray Euler, who was my roommate, said, "Yeah, he says, believe me, he's going to win 30. Next thing we know, we're winning 31 ball games, winning the pennant, the World Series, and what a year that was.
Sure was, Denny. And again, 28 complete games that year. You had 5 years in a row with double-digit complete games. And I was the game has changed so much, it's almost impossible to compare. But did you ever, in that stretch, Denny, from, say, 65 to 70, hear a manager or a pitching coach mention the number of pitches you had thrown or will throw?
Yeah, you know what? And not the number of pitches. This is the way they counted. Taking you out of the ball game had nothing to do with the number of pitches. If you were a low ball pitcher, and by the 5th, 6th, or 7th inning, they started watching you very, very closely if the ball was coming up. The ball was coming up, they were going to have 1 or 2 guys in the bullpen warming up. I was a high ball pitcher. So when I would get in trouble is when I would start to pitch down. All of a sudden I thought I was Dombrowski, for God's sakes, the right-handed relief pitcher with the Baltimore Orioles for years. And I was not a low ball pitcher by anybody's imagination. And that's when I get into a little bit of trouble. But as long as I kept the ball up with that big curveball that I had, and eventually the slider, things went pretty well. But the complete game thing is got to do with pitches. And I will tell you, one game that I pitched in 68, I think it was 68, I threw 253 pitches, 253, and won the ball game 7-3. Believe it or not, wow. Pitched 9 innings. And I mean, I don't know if my arm ever was back in the sockets the way it should have been, but that started kind of a little bit of pain in elbow and shoulder trouble with my rotator cuff. But the bottom line was that's what we were told to do. We were told to go out and pitch 9 innings. As long as we were winning, they were going to leave you in the ball game. The instruction then versus now was so much better. You pitched a lot. And the other thing that the game has really changed, and I think you all recognize this, in the minor leagues, you don't spend any time there anymore. If you can throw the ball at 90, 95 miles an hour, you're getting a shot in the big leagues right away. You're in Albuquerque one day, the next day you're in Kansas City or Chicago, wherever it might be, and you're not getting the opportunity to perfect your skills. You're not learning how to throw a good curveball. And the worst part about it, guys, is they don't learn how to pitch. The golden rule is, if you're ahead of a hitter, you go get them. You go get them hard with your best stuff. If you're behind a hitter, you throw something off speed. If you're 1-0, 2-0, 3-1, changeups are the greatest pitch in the world. Greatest, because everybody sits back on a 1-0 count, 2-0 count, 3-1 count, and they all believe that, man, you're going to try to throw a fastball by him. And pitching is not about trying to throw a ball by anybody. And today, I think you would admit that we got so many guys who want to throw the ball by people. And the other thing that bothers me a lot is the number of strikeouts, because everybody tells me, and I do not believe you can compare eras, but these hitters in this era that we're playing with right now and the pitching, I'd love to see Kaline and Freehand and Mantle and Maris and all these guys play against this pitching. I'm telling you, I don't think 65 home runs, 70 home runs would be a whole lot of home runs with those guys. That's how good a hitter they were. They were guys that played in the minor leagues for a while. They perfected their product. They knew how to play the game. And the other thing was fundamentally, all the teams knew how to play. Hell, we used to hit a cutoff man once in a while. We'd bunt once in a while. We'd do a hit and run or a run and hit. We'd pick a guy off. Well, I didn't pick many off, but the bottom line simply was we played the game, and that was more important than some of the bigger stuff. The guy would hit, grand slam home run that one day. And the bottom line simply is the game was played at a much better pace. And I can prove it. Most of our games are 2 hours and 15, 20 minutes. Now, doesn't that tell you our pitchers were throwing that many more strikes?
Right.
I mean, just think about
Denny,
it. I used to tell Jimmy Leland one thing. I said, "You got the toughest job in baseball." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "You and every other manager, before you go out every night, you got to figure out what 4 pitchers are you using tonight." He says, "I never thought it that way, but you're right." He said, "I do." He said, "I make a list of 4 people every night." And I said, "Hell, you only got 11 guys." Jimmy was never too smart with the math.
Well, Denny, I mean, there's a ton of questions that Bob and I would love to ask you. Unfortunately, we just don't have enough time. We hope you'll come back and join us again sometime. This has been a huge treat.
You call me anytime you want. I'm working a lot, but you know what? I enjoy this, and I enjoy you guys, and my very best to you and your audience, and see you around the corner.
We appreciate it, Denny.
We appreciate that, Denny. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to you and your family.
Same to you and all your fans out there. Have a great week.
Talk
Bye-bye.
soon. Take care.
Thanks. You too, Denny. That is the legendary Tigers pitcher, Denny McLain. Oh, geez, Bob. I mean, the guy's got, I'm sure, a million great stories. And unfortunately, just not enough time to get to a lot of them. But, boy, you want to talk about a guy who was dominant in the late 60s. And, again, last pitcher to win, 30 or more games. And, one of the things I wanted to get to, we just didn't have time, was when he won his 30th game on September 14th, 1968. Dizzy Dean, who was the last guy to win 30 games, and that was all the way back in 1934, was on hand to congratulate him. Boy, that would have been a great story to hear. Hopefully we get to have Denny back on the show again real soon.
Chris, he's a fascinating guy. When I first talked to him a few years back, it was one of the interviews I would never forget. I was able to do a half hour with him, I believe, and we still hadn't scratched the surface just because of the numbers he put up. I think I was in 3rd grade when all that was happening in 1968, and people forget that 31-6 that year, Chris, he followed it up with 24 wins the next year and even more shutouts. And the numbers were incredible. And he'll tell you the next time we talk about the fun these guys had in the clubhouse. Gates Brown was a character. We had talked to him weeks before we had talked to Denny. Mickey Lolich riding to the park on a motorcycle. Denny playing the organ in the clubhouse. It was a loose bunch of guys, Chris, but they could play. And we'll save a lot for our audience because it's truly an honor and special. Very special when we talk to such a guy like McLain. He is a legend.
Indeed he is. All right, Bob, let's get right into it with our Thursday night tailgate spotlight on the positive. Who you putting your spotlight on this week?
Well, this one, almost brought tears to my eyes. I was reading about this early in the week, Chris, and it happened yesterday. Every year, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, their defensive tackle, Gerald McCoy, Chris, he has done it for 5 years now. He puts on something called the annual McCoy Family Christmas. Now, he has it at the the Tampa Bay training facility there, the indoor facility. And what he does, it started years ago, about 5-6 years ago, where he would just probably get a few families together and feed them and buy gifts for them. These are families that were hurting going into the holidays, single parent families. But he's got this up now where he has partnered with United Way and something called Metropolitan Ministries down in Tampa, where he gets about 40 families these last few years. They come into the practice facility, Chris. They kind of walk around the field, and they sit down. They have a very nice, warm holiday meal. And then without a lot of these families and kids knowing, Mr. Gerald has gone out there and come up with wish lists on the parts of all these children and people, and he actually comes through giving these kids bikes and things like that. It was really, really incredible. They actually have video of it on the Tampa Bay website. So again, it'll bring tears to your eyes if you play the video and read the story. But it's called, again, the annual Christmas with the McCoys, and they just did their 5th one. This happened just a couple nights ago, Chris, and so it's fresh on their website. But kudos to Gerald McCoy, defensive tackle of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Incredible stuff he's doing.
Yeah, no, that's an amazing story. So kudos to you, Bob, for finding that one, and to him as well. And Bob, earlier tonight we talked about Kansas City Chiefs quarterback Alex Smith and being snubbed for the Pro Bowl. Well, tonight I want to put my spotlight on him for the great work that he's doing off the field with his foundation. And what they do is provide mentorship and support programs for foster kids to try to help them go to college. And his foundation has been upheld as a model one, not just for athletes, but for philanthropists in general, for how well his foundation is being run. Generally, experts say that nonprofit organizations should put at least 2/3 of its proceeds back towards its cause. Well, Alex Smith puts 91% of its proceeds, towards its mission. And so far, his foundation has helped 23 foster kids graduate from college, and he's successfully lobbied his home state of California to increase the age of support to foster children from 18 years up to 23 years. And his foundation, they're running lean on their overhead. That's how they, try to have as much of the funding, go into, these programs. He's got his family running the program. His mom is, at the head of that. And plus, on top of that, Bob, he is taking money out of his own pocket to help these kids, which is absolutely fantastic. Not just money he raises by doing a golf tournament or whatever. He's taking money out of his own bank account to help some of these kids, and he's trying to do as much as he can, for foster kids who are aging out of the state program, right? So kids that are, getting to, 20, 21, 22, 23, these kids are going to be, out of the foster care program and essentially left, to, struggle on their own from there. It's like, the state has done as much as they can for the kids. Now they're sort of on their own. So what his program's trying to do is, help these kids get an education and to give themselves a leg up and opportunities they wouldn't normally otherwise get. So you look at the state of California stats, Bob, 5% of kids that are in foster care ever graduate from college. Well, the people that are in Alex's program so far, 80% of them have graduated, and it's 80% because some of them are still in the program and they haven't graduated yet. So he's doing such a great job with foster kids, and so kudos to Alex Smith, and of course, Bob, to yours, Gerald McCoy. Two guys doing great things.
Yeah, we've talked about Alex in the past. He continues to do great things, even though he's been aligned on the football field at times, Chris. The things he's doing off are just incredible, and all these good things going on are very, very respected throughout the year. But they take on a different meaning around the holidays, and this is probably one of our more memorable ones when it happens this time of the year.
Indeed. All right, Bob. Time for us to put a bow on this episode of Thursday Night Tailgate. We want to send out our thanks once again to Randy Grossman, Tony Collins, Olandis Gary, Paul Alexander, and Denny McLain for joining us tonight. And Bob, just like I say every single week, the best part is spending my Thursday nights doing this show with you, my friend.
Well, yeah, it was a lot of fun. I got goosebumps talking to Denny McLain, and I always do because that was a part of my youth, and that's a legend right there. And we don't use that term loosely on here. But again, Well, I wish you a Merry Christmas, Chris. Well, I guess we won't talk till the new year. So this was a very, very fun year, very successful year, and I can't wait to start it all over in January.
I appreciate that very much. Merry Christmas to you and yours, my friend. And, yeah, we look forward to catching up again in a couple of weeks. And when we do, we'll be kicking off 2018 with a set of really great friends. New Florida A&M head coach Willie Simmons. He's been with us several times as the head coach of Prairie View A&M. Willie has accepted the head coaching job at his alma mater, Florida A&M. So we look forward to catching up with Willie and hear all about that. Former Cleveland Browns defensive back Felix Wright will be with us, as will super agent and TNT Hall of Famer Lee Steinberg. Great to get Lee back on the show. And former Rams Pro Bowl quarterback and birthday boy Jim Everett. Jimmy turns 55 on January 3rd, so we look forward to celebrating a little bit with him when we kick off 2018 on January 4th. That's the first Thursday night in January. And, of course, Tony Collins will be with us to go through our 5-star picks of the week. So look forward to coming back, and we hope you'll come back and be a part of the show with us. I want to remind everybody how you can stay up to date with what we're doing on social media. First, visit us on Facebook. We've got a Facebook page for the show, Thursday Night Tailgate. Give us a like. That's very important to us. Both Bob and I have our own Facebook pages as well. Please also check out our website, ThursdayNightTailgate.com. On there, you'll be able to see who some of our future guests are going to be. You'll be able to stream or download any of our archive episodes for free from there. Plus, also check us out on Podbean. That's a great podcasting site. They've got great podcasts across all genres. So if you love streaming podcasts, they've got great ones, including us. We appreciate their support of us. We've been a featured podcast on there all year long, as our golf show has been as well. Next on the Tee. So if you like golf as well, please check out our Next on the Tee show over there as well. On Twitter, you can find me at CT Mascaro. Bob is at Bob_Lazari, and the show is at TNT Podcast, so you can find us there on Twitter. Bob, Merry Christmas again. Happy holidays to you and your family, and we look forward to catching up with you on Thursday, January the 4th. In between now and then, take us home.
Same to you. Thank you, Chris. And the same also to our great announcer, Joe Lajanusa, for the terrific job he does with our intro and ads, and to Kyle Turley and the Kyle Turley Band for the upcoming outro music. On behalf of myself and Chris, we thank everyone out there tonight for listening. We appreciate you the most. Until 2 weeks from now, good night, Kevin, and good night, Terry. We miss you guys.
Coming down